For 3 years, the staff at Metropolitan General Hospital knew Rachel Miller as the quiet woman who pushed a broom. They saw the slight, almost imperceptible limp in her right leg, the way her gray-streaked hair was always pulled back in a severe, functional bun. They saw hands that trembled just slightly when she gripped the handle of her cleaning cart. To them, she was a fixture of the graveyard shift, as silent and unremarkable as the fluorescent hum of the empty corridors. She was invisible, a ghost in a drab gray uniform, existing only to erase the messy evidence of other people's lives. Dr. Julian Sterling, Chief of Cardiothoracic Surgery, made a point of not seeing her at all. Or rather, he saw her as an obstacle, a slow-moving piece of hospital equipment that occasionally got in his way. He was a man sculpted from ego and ambition, his Ivy League credentials and tailored Italian suits forming a kind of armor against the grubby realities of the world. "Watch the floor, Clara," he'd clipped one night, not bothering to learn her real name, as his expensive leather shoes scuffed a freshly mopped section of the ER hallway. He didn't break stride. He didn't look back. Behind him, a young sycophantic resident named Jessica snickered into her hand. Rachel said nothing. She simply waited for them to pass, then methodically ran the mop over the scuff marks, her movements economical and precise. They see a tremor and think it's age, think it's weakness, she thought, her eyes scanning the layout of the emergency room. They don't see the muscle memory of holding a giggly saw steady while mortars walked in closer. They don't see control. The humiliations were small, constant, and always public. Sterling seemed to derive a particular pleasure from performing his cruelty before an audience. One evening, during a lull, he found Rachel organizing a supply closet. "I see we're branching out," he said loudly, making sure the nurses at the nearby station could hear. "Finally decided to learn where the 4x4s are kept? Don't strain yourself. We wouldn't want you to forget how to operate a mop." The nurses tittered nervously. Rachel simply closed the closet door, her face a placid mask. Her gaze flickered to the crash cart, her mind automatically inventorying its contents. Lidocaine, epi, atropine, all present. Defib paddles need cleaning. It was an old habit, a tactical assessment of her environment that she could no more stop than she could stop breathing. To the others, she just looked vacant, staring into space. Her limp was a source of particular amusement for Jessica, the young resident who shadowed Sterling like a pilot fish. "Careful, Rachel," she'd sing-song, if Rachel was moving a bit slower than usual. "Don't want to fall and break the other hip." Rachel never corrected them. She never told them the limp came from 2 7.6 2mm rounds that had torn through her femur during an extraction in the Korengal Valley. She never mentioned that the slight tremor in her hands wasn't from frailty, but from the lingering nerve damage of holding a teammate's chest cavity together for 2 hours in a shaking Blackhawk. The scars that crisscrossed her back and torso, a roadmap of a life they couldn't possibly imagine, remained hidden beneath the cheap fabric of her uniform. Her silence was her camouflage. Anonymity was her armor. She was retired. She was done. All she wanted was the quiet hum of the floor polisher and the solitude of the late-night hours. Tonight, however, the quiet was destined to be shattered. It started as a low, guttural tear in the fabric of the night, the sound of sirens, not one or two, but a symphony of them converging on the hospital. A multi-vehicle pileup on the interstate, a disastrous chain reaction in the freezing rain. The ER, moments before a sea of calm, erupted into controlled chaos. Sterling, who was just about to leave, thrived in such moments. It was theater, and he was the star. He barked orders, his voice cutting through the din, a maestro of trauma, and for the most part, he was good. His hands were steady, his knowledge textbook perfect. But then came the critical patient, the one who changed everything. He was brought in on a backboard, surrounded by grim-faced men in dark suits. A state police escort cleared the way. Even amidst the carnage, this arrival felt different. The patient was an older man, his face ashen, his uniform shredded and stained with blood. A constellation of stars on his collar was visible through a tear in the jacket. General Mark Anderson, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, his motorcade had been in the pileup, or, as it would later be revealed, the pileup had been created for his motorcade. Sterling's eyes lit up with a predatory gleam. This was not just a patient. This was a career-making opportunity. Get him into Trauma Bay 1. Now, I want a full workup stat. I'm running this code, he bellowed, shoving a junior doctor out of the way. Rachel was in the bay, cleaning a blood spill from a previous patient. She moved to the corner, trying to make herself smaller, invisible. But she couldn't turn off her eyes. She couldn't silence the diagnostic part of her brain that had been forged in the crucible of combat. She saw the general's labored breathing, the paradoxical movement of his chest. She saw the distended veins in his neck, the tracheal deviation that was subtle but undeniable to a trained eye. Sterling, focused on a nasty abdominal wound, was missing it. He was shouting for chest tubes, for x-rays, for blood transfusions. He was treating the loudest injury, not the most lethal one. He's going to kill him. The thought was cold and sharp in Rachel's mind. Tension, pneumothorax, classic presentation. He's got minutes, maybe seconds. The monitors confirmed her silent diagnosis. The general's O2 saturation plummeted. The blood pressure alarm began its frantic, high-pitched scream. "He's crashing! Push another unit of ONEG!" Sterling yelled, his composure beginning to fray. Rachel took a step forward. Her voice was a low whisper, meant only for the young nurse, Maria, who stood closest to her. "Tell him to check for breath sounds on the left. It's a tension pneumo." Maria's eyes widened, but before she could speak, Sterling whirled around, his face a mask of fury. "What did you say?" He spat, his eyes locking onto Rachel. "Are you presuming to offer a medical opinion?" "You?" He laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "This is my trauma bay, not a janitor's closet. Get the hell out of here before I have security throw you out. You are a liability." Jessica smirked. "She probably saw it on a TV show, doctor." The general's heart monitor flatlined. The steady tone of death filled the room. "Damn it! Start compressions! Get me the paddles!" Sterling roared, sweat beading on his forehead. His confidence had shattered, replaced by panic. And in that moment, something inside Rachel broke. Or rather, something was reforged. The years of quiet, of hiding, of letting the insults wash over her, they all burned away, consumed by a fire she thought had long been extinguished. It was the cold, clear fire of purpose. She moved. Her limp was gone. Her shuffle was replaced by a glide, a movement of terrifying grace and efficiency. She didn't shove past Sterling, she simply flowed around him, an unstoppable current. Her trembling hand snatched a 14-gauge angiocath from a sterile tray. "Stop compressions," she said. Her voice was unrecognizable. The whisper was gone, replaced by a low-timbered command that resonated with absolute authority. It was the voice of someone who had given orders while hellfire rained down around them. The nurse doing compressions, a young man named Greg, froze, his hands hovering over the general's chest. "Did you hear me?" Sterling shrieked, his voice cracking. "Security! Get this woman out of my hospital!" Rachel didn't even look at him. Her eyes were fixed on her patient. Her left hand palpated the general's chest, finding the space between the second and third ribs, mid-clavicular line. Her movements were a blur of practiced perfection. "I need a one-way valve or the finger from a sterile glove, now." Maria, the young nurse, moved without thinking, instinctively obeying the command. She snipped the finger from a glove and handed it to Rachel. With a surgeon's precision, Rachel plunged the large-bore needle into the general's chest. There was a distinct, audible hiss as trapped air rushed from his pleural cavity. She affixed the makeshift valve. On the monitor, a blip appeared, then another. A slow, steady sinus rhythm. The oxygen saturation numbers began to climb from the depths. A collective gasp went through the room. Sterling stared, his jaw slack, his face a mottled canvas of shock and fury. You have no right." Before he could finish, a new sound intruded. A deep, rhythmic thump, thump, thump that grew rapidly louder, vibrating through the very bones of the hospital. It wasn't the sound of a news chopper. It was the heavy percussive beat of military-grade rotors, multiple helicopters descending fast. Simultaneously, the hospital's main entrance doors exploded inward, not from an impact, but from a controlled breach. The power cut out, plunging the ER into the eerie red glow of the emergency backup lights. Through the shattered doorway came shadows, moving low and fast. 6 figures, clad in matte black tactical gear, armed with suppressed M4s. They fanned out, clearing the room with terrifying, silent efficiency. They weren't police. They weren't SWAT. They were something else entirely. The lead operator, a giant of a man with a Ghost One on his chest plate, swept his rifle across the room. His eyes, visible behind his night vision goggles, took in the scene. The stunned doctors, the stabilized general, the neutralized threats from the initial ambush lying just outside the doors, and the old woman in the janitor's uniform holding a bloody catheter, her posture radiating a lethal calm. Sterling found his voice, a reedy, pathetic thing. "Thank God! These people need to be arrested. This woman assaulted my patient." The operator, Ghost 1, ignored him completely. He took 2 steps into the trauma bay, his weapon lowering slightly. His voice, filtered through his comm system, was calm and professional, yet laced with something that sounded like profound relief. "Angel 6, is that you? Command said you were in the vicinity." Rachel didn't take her eyes off the general's vitals. "Confirm your identity, Ghost 1." Her voice was clipped, military formal. The SEAL team leader straightened up, pulling off his helmet. "Commander, it's good to see you." The other 5 operators in the room visibly relaxed, their weapons lowering to a low-ready position. They had found who they were looking for. The room was utterly silent, save for the steady beeping of the heart monitor. Dr. Sterling's face had gone from red to a ghastly, bloodless white. Jessica looked as if she'd seen a ghost. "Sit, Rep Ghost," Rachel commanded, her tone leaving no room for argument. "Motorcade was ambushed, ma'am. Attackers were trying to finish the job. We have the perimeter secured. Extraction bird is on the roof. The general is our only priority." "He's stable," Rachel reported, finally turning to look at the SEAL. "Tension pneumothorax, secondary to blunt force trauma. I performed a needle decompression. He'll need a proper chest tube and surgical follow-up for his other injuries. But he'll fly." "Understood, Commander," Ghost 1 said. Then he turned his head, his gaze falling upon Dr. Sterling. The look in his eyes was colder than the freezing rain outside. "You," Sterling flinched. I am the Chief of Surgery here." Ghost 1 took a slow, deliberate step towards him, his sheer size seeming to suck the air out of the room. "This woman," he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl as he gestured toward Rachel with his helmet, "is Commander Rachel Miller, United States Navy, retired. Call sign Angel. For 20 years, she was the senior combat medic for SEAL Team 6. She has performed surgery in the back of crashing helicopters and on sinking ships. The procedure she just performed on your patient, she pioneered a field expedient version of it that's now standard doctrine for all of SOCOM." He took another step. Sterling tried to back away, but bumped into a gurney. "She holds the Navy Cross for pulling 3 men, myself included, out of a burning vehicle under enemy fire in Ramadi. She holds 2 silver stars, 3 bronze stars with valor, 4 purple hearts. The tremor in her hands is from nerve damage sustained while she was shielding a wounded Marine from a grenade blast. The limp you probably made fun of is from the 2 bullets she took to the leg while dragging our team leader to safety in Afghanistan." Each word was a hammer blow, dismantling Sterling's world piece by piece. The nurses and doctors stood frozen, their minds struggling to reconcile the image of the quiet janitor with the living legend being described before them. Jessica looked like she was going to be physically sick, her earlier mockery now tasting like ash in her mouth. "The man you almost killed," Ghost 1 continued, his voice now a venomous whisper, "is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He is alive right now for one reason. Because Commander Miller was here to clean up your mess. You didn't just display incompetence, Doctor. You actively interfered with a Tier 1 operator during a critical medical intervention on a national asset. You are a liability." He used Sterling's own word against him, and it landed with the force of a physical strike. Federal agents who had entered behind the SEALs now moved forward. "Dr. Sterling," one said, his tone flat and official, "you're coming with us. You have the right to remain silent." As they cuffed him, Sterling's arrogant facade finally crumbled, revealing the pathetic, terrified man beneath. His eyes darted to Rachel, pleading. I didn't know." Rachel met his gaze, and for the first time, he saw what was truly there. Not weakness, not frailty. He saw the calm, unyielding strength of a warrior who had walked through the valley of the shadow of death and brought others back with her. She said nothing. Her silence was his final damning judgment. The SEALs packaged General Anderson for transport, their movements a seamless ballet of professional skill. As they wheeled him out, Ghost 1 paused beside Rachel. "It was an honor, ma'am, always." "Stay safe out there, Ghost," she replied, her voice softening for the first time. He nodded, put his helmet back on, and was gone. The ER was a wreck, filled with stunned hospital staff, federal agents, and the lingering smell of ozone from the breached doors. Rachel stood in the middle of it all, a small, gray-haired woman in a cheap uniform. But no one saw the janitor anymore. They saw the commander. They saw the angel. Maria, the young nurse, approached her hesitantly, holding out a clean towel. "Commander Miller, your hands." Rachel looked down. Her hands were covered in the general's blood. The tremor was still there, a constant companion. But now they saw it for what it was, not a sign of weakness, but a testament to sacrifice. She took the towel. "Thank you, Maria. And just Rachel is fine." But it would never be just Rachel again. Not here. In the space of 10 chaotic minutes, the truth had been revealed. And as the sound of the Black Hawks faded into the night, the staff of Metropolitan General were left to grapple with a profound and humbling lesson that heroes don't always wear capes or uniforms or expensive Italian suits. Sometimes they wear gray, and sometimes they carry a mop,